Putting a Shaolin monk dressed for the Old West into the 90s sounded absolutely mad, but Kung Fu The Legend Continues reached an estimated 6 million American homes. It gave David Carradine the weekly comeback he had chased for years and brought Caine to a new generation, but making it wasn't as calm as he made it look. The writer's room was a complete mess. The fight scenes became big trouble in little time, and the network carrying the show started falling apart. This is the mess behind Kung Fu The Legend Continues. Now, long before Kung Fu became a television hit, it was meant to be a movie. Around 1967, Ed Spielman and Howard Friedlander began building a story that mixed a Shaolin monk with an American Western. Spielman came up with the monk, but Friedlander saw where the story should go. Take him out of Asia and send him walking through the Old West. They called it The Way of the Tiger, The Sign of the Dragon, and made their hero half Chinese and half American. The pair sent the treatment to an agent to help them get it to producer Fred Weintraub at Warner Brothers. The studio liked it and paid them to turn it into a feature script, while Weintraub believed he knew the perfect man to play Caine, Bruce Lee. But Warner Brothers film division didn't want to risk it. Weintraub later said the people running the company didn't believe audiences would accept a Chinese man carrying a major American movie, so he took the same script across to Warner's television side. From there, it ended up with ABC, and by 1971, Warner was turning Kung Fu into one of its television movies. But they still needed someone to play the lead character Caine, so Weintraub kept on pushing for Bruce Lee, and he arranged an audition for him. The suits liked Bruce, but felt that Caine's character was quiet and peaceful until someone pushed him too far, while Lee came across as too intense and that his accent was too difficult to understand. So they rejected him and all the other Asian actors that auditioned for the part, including Mako. When Carradine arrived for his first read, he didn't exactly knock it out of the park. According to Tom Khan, he was less kung fu and more bong fu as he was stoned out of his face, but he still managed to give a decent performance. But the suits weren't convinced. With filming about to start in 2 weeks, the suits still couldn't find the lead, so they decided to bring back Carradine. This time though, he was completely straight and he got the part. As a result, Kung Fu aired in 1972, bringing in good numbers, so ABC ordered 4 more episodes. They were shown once a month on Saturday nights opposite All in the Family, in a slot known as Death Row. But the audience kept coming back, so they ordered another 12 and moved the show to Thursday nights, turning it into a weekly series. The show ended up running for 3 seasons before Carradine walked away. He later said the scripts were starting to feel like normal Western stories, and also he wanted to move into film. But he did admit later that he regretted leaving and spent years trying to find a way back. Warner Brothers did give him that chance back in 1986 with Kung Fu the movie. He returned as the original Caine, while Bruce Lee's son Brandon played Chung Wang, the son he never knew he had. At the time, a weekly series was discussed, but Carradine thought they were stripping out the beliefs that made Caine different, so he pulled out, and that version died. The studio tried to keep going with Kung Fu The Next Generation. Brandon Lee returned as Johnny Caine, a completely different descendant with David Darlow playing his dad. The pilot aired through CBS, but it went no further. That left Carradine still chasing the same thing, a weekly return. The first plan was to take Caine back to the Old West, but nobody wanted another period version, so the character had to find somewhere new to go. The answer was the 90s, and the timing was perfect. Independent stations across the states needed recognizable action programs they could show in primetime, while Warner Brothers was putting together a new network called PTEN. Kung Fu gave them exactly what they wanted, a name that already came with an audience, The star was willing to return, and moving the story into the present meant the studio could sell it as a modern action series. It looked like the perfect home for a comeback, until that home started falling apart, but we'll get back to that later. Bringing Caine into the present caused a more immediate problem though. The original series could send him wandering into a different town whenever it needed a story. A modern version of it needed a reason for Danger to find him every week. Michael Sloan solved it by dropping both family lines from the earlier attempts and building the whole program around the son Caine believed he had lost. The pilot would pick up 15 years after Tan destroyed the Shaolin Temple where Caine and his son are separated. Each think the other has died, but while Caine goes back to wandering, Peter is raised by a police captain and becomes a detective. That basically becomes the series. Once reunited, Peter's police work brings trouble to Caine, while the two of them deal with it in completely different ways.
I don't do kung fu, I'm a cop. That's who I am, that's what I do.
None of that would work though without the right Peter, and one actor stood out: Chris Potter. He wasn't a big name. He spent years doing adverts and had a regular part in the sitcom Material World. In 1992, he went to Burbank to screen test with Carradine. When it was over, Potter went into the casting director's office and laid down on the floor. Then all of a sudden, Carradine comes in, kicks him in the ribs and says, "You got it, let's go and celebrate." With Carradine and Potter hitting it off, Robert Lansing joined as Peter's adopted father and police captain Paul Blaisdell. Michael Sloan had written the part specifically for Lansing after they worked together on The Equalizer, and he stayed with the show through season 2, but more on that later. With the family in place, the music had to bridge the two worlds. Composer Jeff Danner, who later scored The Boondock Saints and Resident Evil Apocalypse, wrote a score that mixed orchestral music and electronics with Chinese instruments. It sounded old and new at the same time, which was the perfect mix for Caine walking around in the 90s. And now, a message from our sponsor. Yeah, I know, a sponsor. Apparently, people like listening to a middle-aged Cypriot with a Cockney accent talk about movies and TV shows. So Oxford Natural, the creators of Optimum Day and Optimum Night, are offering you a huge 70% discount off your first order when using the QR code on screen or code DREAL. Optimum Day and Optimum Night are a supplement stack made to support your energy, metabolism, and cravings during the day while helping you relax, recover, and sleep better at night. So if you're sitting there thinking, I need to get my act together and feel a bit sharper, this might be for you. The series premiered in January 93, and by February it was reaching an estimated 5.9 million American homes, putting it just behind The Untouchables, but just ahead of Time Tracks. That was enough for Warner Brothers to order another 22 episodes. The critics though had to have a proper moan. The Los Angeles Times said Carradine's performance had slipped into self-parody and mocked the show's slow-motion fights. People magazine also thought the modern setting didn't work as well as the Old West, but said Carradine still had it. Viewers though didn't care what the critics had to say. They never do. They kept coming back for more, and the series went on for 4 years. But behind the scenes, those seasons were full of problems.
Now, the Primetime Entertainment Network is pleased to present Kung Fu, The Legend Continues.
Warner Brothers originally planned to make the series in LA, but moved the whole production to Toronto so they can save money. That solved one issue, but it didn't make the workload any lighter. The Toronto crew still had to turn out 22 episodes every year, and in 1994, the production lost one of its main cast members when Robert Lansing became too ill to continue. He sadly died from cancer later that year. At the same time, the writer's room was beginning to break down. Writers were sometimes handed a single scene without being told what came before it or what was meant to happen afterwards. That lack of planning followed the episode into the editing room. When everything was finally cut together, an episode could still be 10 minutes short, forcing the writers to go back and create more scenes just to get it finished. And the scripts weren't the only problem. By season 3, our Leong was running the fight scenes after years playing bad guys in films like Rapid Fire, Lethal Weapon, Die Hard, and Big Trouble in Little China. He'd also written several kung fu scripts of his own. When his contract ran out and the producers asked him to return for the 4th season, he made them an offer they couldn't refuse: buy one of his scripts or find another fight coordinator. They agreed and bought one of his scripts for season 4, while he ended up writing another episode as well. Once filming began, Leong's problem was time. The suits upstairs wanted every episode finished and in the can really fast, leaving him without enough time to get the fights done safely. He fell out badly with the production and wrote straight to Warner Brothers, laying out the risks. But a proper answer never came back, so he walked away. By then though, the network was coming apart. PTEN depended on local stations carrying its shows, but Warner Brothers started putting everything into their new venture, the WB, while their partner, Chris Kraft, pulled out as well to concentrate on UPN. So more and more local stations started joining the new networks, and by March 96, Warner Brothers had thrown Kung Fu in the bin. Fans weren't having it. More than 4,000 letters were sent, and they even paid for an advert asking the studio to bring it back for a 5th season. Sadly, another episode never came, so the fans wrote the next one themselves. They used newsletters and early websites to build an unofficial 5th season. Then they kept going until the biggest fan archive held more than 800 stories. Now, getting the actual series on home video was a total different story. The 2-hour pilot initially came out on VHS in '92, but the regular seasons never made it to tape. The same pilot though reached DVD in 2004. Then season 1 followed a few years later. In 2014, Warner Archive released the first 2 seasons, but seasons 3 and 4 never followed. Now, for fans who want to add the series to their collection, I've added a link in the description below, and there should also be a card popping up on screen to help you check it out. By the time those DVDs arrived, both leads had already moved on. Chris Potter went straight from Kung Fu into Silk Stalkings, before later playing Tim Fleming in Heartland. Carradine had his own comeback again in 2003, when Quentin Tarantino cast him as Bill in Kill Bill. Not only did that part put him back in the spotlight, it also earned him a Golden Globe nomination. Sadly, Carradine passed away in 2009, but the story behind Kung Fu wasn't actually finished. 10 years later, Warrior reached television using notes and ideas left behind by Bruce Lee long after the Lee estate claimed Kung Fu was his idea. The series followed Assam, a Chinese martial artist who comes to 1870s San Francisco looking for his sister, but ends up in the middle of a gang war. It ran for 3 seasons and was absolutely awesome. Then in 2021, Warner brought back Kung Fu again, and this time Olivia Lang was leading it. She played Nikki Shen, who returns from a Shaolin monastery and uses her martial arts to protect her family and Chinatown. So 50 years after Warner Brothers refused to let an Asian actor lead Kung Fu, a Chinese-American woman was carrying the whole thing. Now, for my own take on Kung Fu The Legend Continues. I watch this every now and then, but I wasn't properly hooked on it. Initially, of course I've said this before, anything involving martial arts is always going to get my attention initially. But I'm going to be honest with you, I barely remember anything about this show. And when I went back to make this video, I realized it. One thing I do remember though, David Carradine can't fight to save his life, and his martial arts are so bad at times they're actually really funny. But the show itself, it's alright. It's not a masterpiece of course, but it's cheesy 90s fun. And we're not done yet. Next time we take a look at another classic series. Until then, why don't you check out our previous video on Alien Nation.
That was the scene in California's Mojave Desert 5 years ago. Our historic first view of the newcomer's ship.
Thanks for watching, please like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.